Marcus, I'm really excited to have you here. You've been a big part of my life as a mentor. I used your book today in a coaching call
All
with a
this.
client. But tell us a little bit about yourself for those of us in the crowd who don't know you yet.
What's going on? Jakob, thanks for having me on. It's my absolute pleasure to be here. And I'll tell you, when I got started in sales, I was terrible, absolutely terrible. Almost got fired. Never thought I'd make it in sales. Never wanted to be an entrepreneur. Never wanted to do any of those things. I remember just struggling with every single possible objection, from pricing to value to we're good to we're not interested. Let me think about it, and all those stalls. And I remember really struggling early on. Now, eventually, I figured out I had some success, and I stayed in my corporate sales career for another 13 years. Did pretty well. I hit my quota 13 years in a row, 100, 250% plus. Got promoted 12 times in the first 8 years. So eventually did figure it out. Got to the point when I was running a sales org of about 110 plus employees doing over 200 million a year in sales. Did that for quite a while. And eventually I'm like, I better just start my own business. So eventually I decided to rip the Band-Aid off, go all in. And in September 2019, I thought I'd be absolutely amazing at it, and I was terrible again. And I realized how hard it is to run your own business and to have to wear the product hat, the accounting hat, the finance hat, the marketing hat, the sales hat, the fulfillment hat, the everything hat. And that was really hard. Now, fortunately, eventually figured it out. And the first 18 months, we did over 7 figures in the first 18 months. We've scaled up since then. I'm very blessed now, in which now I work directly with salespeople and sales teams, helping them 2, 3, 5, 10x their results in less than 90 days. It's a lot of fun. It's very gratifying. And I'm excited to chat with you today.
Amazing. I've definitely been on the beneficiary side of that. Let's just jump straight into it. A lot of people, when it comes to discovery calls, they struggle. And I think that the best place probably to start is, what do you think are the 8 things people need to discover on a discovery call to close easily? Because it's all
Mhm.
about that main word, discovering.
What's interesting is, I think what's important to understand is, early on when I was struggling quite a bit in sales, I remember I would think I'd do an amazing job of discovery. I think I'd do an amazing job on the demo. I get to the very end, and these objections would pop up, and they kept popping up. And what was interesting is like, if you pay close attention to the facts, you can put it together and you realize they actually tell you a story. And what I realized was, okay, if I could figure out what things I can uncover on the front end as part of the process, it would lead to a virtually objectionless close on the back end. And that's where I came up with a very simple methodology I call the powerful framework. So to make it really easy, powerful is an acronym. Each letter stands for something, and you want to uncover every single category. So I realized when I was consistent with uncovering all these things at a great depth, it led to a virtually objectionless close, because now if they had objections, I had the ammunition to basically use, not only use against them, but help them see why it's not an objection. So let's break it down step by step. So the first P is very simple, which is pain. Are there big problems? This is very important. So first thing, you have to uncover pain. And there's a big difference between a $10,000 problem versus a $1 million problem. So uncovering level of pain, that's going to be a big problem for them. And I've always thought to myself, like, the pain by itself, or the pain with the opportunity cost, should be 10x whatever you're selling. So if you sell, let's call it a 10K offer, it should be at least $100,000 worth of pain for them, which is really important. Okay. Which ties into the next piece, which is the O, which is the opportunity cost, or what's the cost of an action. If the problem doesn't get fixed, what's the cost of an action? What's the opportunity cost? And again, this is important, because if they don't take action, the problems can keep happening. What will it cost that company? It could be in time, money, energy, wasted resources, or anything else. Then there is the W. What are the wants, needs, and desires? So these are the desired outcomes from solving the problems. These are their big goals, their initiatives. This could be at a micro or macro level, very important. All right. This is their desired future state. Then there's E, executive level influence. So what's the decision-making process and who's involved? So who's the who, what's involved, and what are the steps to actually get there? This is a big one. So some people don't ask these type of questions up front, and they get to the very end. The prospect says, hey, let me talk to my partner, or let me learn about the CFO. Let me talk to X and get back to you. And in which we always know, generally speaking, they don't usually get back to you. All right. Then there's the R, which are, what are the resources, right? So they have access to funds. Does it require internal capacity constraints? What are the resources there? So the mistake some people make is, let's just say, for example, if you sell a 100K offer and you don't ask about the resources, and you find out their budget they have is $10,000. So you have multiple calls to them. If you're not intentional with asking type of questions up front, you might spin your wheels talking to an unqualified prospect, which is complete waste of your time. All right. Then there is going to be F, fear of failure. This is a big one. This is what a lot of people miss, which is this is doubt and uncertainty in their existing vendor or how they're getting it done today. This is really important. Meaning, do they doubt what they're doing is actually going to work out for them? So this is key, because if you don't uncover this, at the very end, they're going to be like, it seems a little expensive, Marcus. I think I'm going to just keep trying what I'm currently doing. And that leads to them just maintaining status quo. So again, this is why you must uncover this. And then there's you, unequivocal trust. Now, this is not necessarily questions. This is more so, are you uncovering, creating trust between you and them, in which they trust you, they trust the solution, they trust the company, trust everything about you. All right. And this is tied to your whole sales process. To L, this is what I call the little stuff. So this is stuff that most people are actually really good at getting. This is like the specifications that you need to implement whatever they need. If you sold, let's say, for example, if you sold a course, all right, they're like, what's in the curriculum? What do you teach inside there? All right. If you're selling software, this might be number of users, might be integrations, might be whatever. So basically things you need to put together a proposal. So there are also potentially other decision criteria, right? And usually they're more low-level requirements. And most people typically are very good at asking the little stuff. They're like, oh, cool. They need this, they need this, they need this, which actually puts you as an order taker versus a trusted advisor. All right. And with the powerful framework I just outlined, there's a scale of 1 to 10 on how effective you are in asking those questions and how deep you actually go. Because reality is, you could say from the executive level influence, you're like, oh, who makes decisions here? They're like, oh, it's pretty much me. And I got to run it by my partner, Charlie. And most people are like, oh, check, cool. Versus going deeper. Hey, so cool. What does Charlie do? Is Charlie aware we're having this conversation? What's most important for Charlie? If Charlie was to say no, why would he say no? What would that look like? How do we get Charlie on board? When do you talk to Charlie? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So you realize that there's actually a depth to all of that. But if you can cover all 8 of those components early on in the process, this makes it far easier on the back end, where it's virtually objectionless, where it just makes sense to do your solution, as long as you show why yours is the best and highest value.
Fantastic. So, one of the things in this powerful methodology, and you talk about this in the book, a lot of it has to do with asking the open ended questions and hard questions to really nail down into what's really going on their side, right? So, a lot of times, and I see this all the times with business owners and salespeople alike, they try to, just like you said, go through the steps to get just enough to send a proposal and hope it what does its magic. And then they come out on the other side and they're like, they go, right? All of a sudden they're gone.
Right.
And a lot of times, just like you said, they become this order taker. And I like the way you put that, as opposed to them really solving problems, as opposed to them understanding what's really making these people tick.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to get them to move towards that objectionless close.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Exactly right.
Amazing. Another thing that I've heard you speak about is the triple T's. How can people use that? Well, first of all, let's get into what is it, and then how do people use that to ask the toughest questions? Because that's really where the objectionless close is going to happen. It's when you really get through those tough questions.
What's interesting is the triple T's is something that's very applicable to really everything in life. This could be for sales. This could be a conversation with your spouse, conversation with your parents, but it's a very simple framework that you can utilize to have the toughest conversations you want to have. So you can ask anybody pretty much anything if you incorporate the triple T's in place, which is, what's your tact like, what's your tone like, and what's the timing like. So this is like really important, because if you can ask a tough question, let's say, for example, you want to find out what their budget is. Let's say if I remove timing from the equation here, let's say I just get on a call with a potential prospect. We get on a call, we have a kind of normal intros and agenda, whatever. And my first question is, first off, before we dive into everything, what's your budget for sales coaching and training? They'll be like, oh, geez, because that timing wasn't right. So that's why it's important to incorporate all these things. Or if you're asking about pain and you want to uncover what their pain is, and if you're like, what's your biggest problems? So now we're removing the tact and the tone, that comes off very intense and very abrupt. Versus if you can adjust a little bit it's gonna sound much better. So for example, if I was asked about pain, it might sound something like, hey, listen, so as you reflect with your own sales process, what do you think might be your biggest challenge with it right now? Or what's not working to the level you feel like it could be or should? So I'm essentially asking the same thing. I'm changing the wording slightly. I'm coordinating tact and tone, right? And timing can be, depending on where in the sequence, can be very effective as well. So if you think about this, you can apply this to everything from business to your spouse to anything in life. You can ask them the toughest questions if you learn how to master the tact, the tone, and the timing.
One of the things that I speak about with my clients is the 6 steps of the discovery call. And a big part of that is it gives them that blueprint so they don't mess up that whole timing
Yep.
piece of it.
Yep.
And the tact and the tone is something we cover as
Mhm.
well. But I think that it's so powerful. People don't realize that when they put the wrong emphasis and the wrong syllable, then
Mhm.
it ruins the whole entire thing, right? Because ultimately, when you come at it, and it's all about the intention and the way that you're saying it, because they're going to get across. Well, we talk about this all the time. When you want to properly serve someone as opposed to sell them something, that's a big part of how that tone is going to come across, right? If
Right.
you're not genuine, if you're not really there to meet them where they're at and serve them and give an amazing experience, so then you're going to be all up in their face and intense because you need that commission. It's going to come across nice and stinky in that commission breath because it's all about you as opposed to about them. So a lot of that I feel also people can help when it comes to getting their mindsets. What do you think about that?
I totally agree because what this all breaks down to is massive self awareness. You need to be really self aware of how you are showing up on Zoom or in person or however you have the conversation, because only when you're really self aware are you going to be able to adapt and adjust it. So I'll give you a really simple example. So I remember early on when someone would give me an objection, I need to think about it. Really, really common objection. Before, I'll be like, cool. What do you need to think about? Very intense. And I would see them stiffen up and, oh, this is what I do. And it became combative. And that's not the right approach. And when you think about this, if you're asking question and you're seeing your prospect consistently tense up or the body language shifts and the energy shifts, those are potential signs. And perhaps we could adjust the tact, the tone, or the timing, or even how you word the question to have a better experience for them. Because if you don't create the right experience for them, they're not going to be upfront with you. They're not going to be honest with you. They're not going to be open to a new solution. And you really need to have an open-minded person to be able to progress a sale forward.
Amazing. What do you feel are some of the biggest mistakes that you see on discovery? So we touched
Yeah.
a little bit on them with the triple T's,
Mhm.
but there are so many different pieces to having a good discovery
Mhm.
call. What do you feel are some of the biggest mistakes people are making?
All the biggest mistakes I see are ones that I've made or something that I'll still make as a result. So I'd say number one is not going deep with the follow-up questions. If you're coming to the table and you already have a list of questions you want to ask, you're probably already ahead of most people. But the mistake is if you go through just a checklist, did you do this? Did I get paid? Did I get opportunity cost? And you're like going like a checklist for all the questions. It feels very robotic. And you're also not able to get like depth into that conversation. So you want to be able to incorporate follow-up questions. Let's say, for example, if I use the original question I asked of, hey, so like, what's your reflecting on your sales process? What's probably the biggest challenge? What's not working to the level you feel like it could be or should? And if they're like, I'm really struggling with handling objections. And I'm like, cool, check. All right, cool. Then I'm next, okay, cool. What's your budget? That okay, this is like very transactional versus, hey, when you say handling objections, what do you mean specifically? Can you tell me a little more about that? Can you elaborate on that? When you say X, what do you mean specifically? What's making you say that? So these follow-up questions goes even deeper. And a really simple framework to think about is every time they have a response, think of RIM. What's the relevance? What's the impact? What's the motive? What's the relevance? What's the impact? What's the motive? I'll tell you quite a bit. Let's say, for example, if they said objection handling, and when they say, I need to think about it, I really struggle. Tell me a little more. I don't know what to say. So what ends up happening is then we maybe set another follow-up call, but then they ghost me. And ultimately, I'm not able to close and make the money I want to make. Got it. So why would you want to solve this potentially? I want to be able to solve it in a way where it doesn't feel sleazy or gross. Like I don't like doing sales calls anyways. I want to be able to feel very organic, so they're walking themselves to their own conclusion that they need our service. So it becomes very easy. So you see with these follow-up questions now, I'm going deeper. You can keep going if you want to, but it gives you very rich content responses that helps take them to a whole new level of what the pain is really about. So that's probably number one, is not going deep and not having follow-up questions. All right. Number two, treating discovery as a step and not as part of the entire process. I think of discovery is really more of a mindset. And mistakes some people make is they say, okay, it's step one, meeting number one, I'm going to do discovery. Meeting number two, I'm going to present my solution. Meeting number three, I'm going to go over the proposal, or it might be condensed down, but they go through checklists, if you will. But the reality is, if you have more than one call, every time you have a call with them is an opportunity to do more discovery. If you miss anything in the powerful framework, how can you go deeper? But also on top of that, things may have changed since that first call. So let's say, for example, if they need to talk to a partner, what happened on that call? What's important to them? What else might have changed? They talk to competitors. We don't really know. So if you really picture discovery as a whole phase, right? It's a mindset of thinking from A all the way to Z, it allows you to actually go deeper and be far more curious. So this is really important because most people actually miss this. And as things change with every single call, they're not getting what's most up to date. Instead, they're relying on the old information from the very first call. But the reality, once you end that call, things will always change. So it's really important to uncover those type of things. Okay. And then number three, I mentioned this, which is just being too rigid. So when you're really rigid, it makes it really hard to have it feel natural for you. So I always picture discovery is like a 8-lane freeway. And you picture each lane is one of the P's. And in the perfect world, you wish you can follow a certain step-by-step method. Once you're on a call, things can go completely sideways. Like they might start talking about something totally random, and you might have to go with that for a little bit. But just like on the freeway, you have a plan to go from A to Z, right? Once you get on the freeway, there's cars around you. There's obstacles. People are going fast, they're going slow. So you want to be able to adjust your styles. You might need to speed up, slow down, change lanes. You might need to get off the freeway and come back on, because this is all really important. So this is key. So I share that with you because I've seen it where some salespeople, they get on a call, and let's say that the process tells them about all the pain, and they know they need to cover other things too. So they're like, all right, cool. They're trying to rush that person, but that person's like sitting in the pain in that moment. That's powerful. Let them go as deep as possible. And then from there, guide to the next question if it makes sense, or go have more follow-up. So don't be too rigid. Understand the end goal is to cover all those 8 things, but be flexible in how you go about doing it. All right. And then number 4, pitching too early, which is they get really excited about something that happens on the call. And suddenly they're like, all right, I'm gonna start pitching the solution. That they hear something like, oh, let's say, for example, Charlie's a packaging rep. So it's like they say something like, oh man, like we're super pissed at our current packaging provider. Like the stuff they always bring is like nothing fits properly, it's poor quality, and they're always delayed on shipments. Well, sometimes you might get excited, like amazing. We're salving at the pain, like amazing. Let me tell you about our 24-hour turnaround time. Let me tell you about our onboarding process. Let me tell you how awesome, amazing we are. And what happens is they're not ready to receive that pitch yet. So you actually end up creating walls between you and them. So pitching too early can actually create more gaps between them. Now, there is a difference though, where are you sharing a story to line pain? Now, there's a difference between sharing a story to line pain versus sharing a case study. So mistakes some people make is they say, they try to connect like, oh man, like that sounds terrible, Marcus. Listen, like I had this customer, Bobby, who's also using the ABC packaging. They were super pissed as well. So they switched to us and they're so happy now. I can't wait to show you our solution. Again, you're actually creating sales resistance versus, wow, I'm really glad you shared that. You actually remind me so much of Marcus, who's over XYZ company, which I don't want to say the name of the company, but it's probably the same company you're using, but they were struggling with the turnaround time. That was really frustrating because now they couldn't get their product to their customers, which actually cost them money. How's it affected you guys at your facility? So notice there's a difference there. I'm aligning pain now because they're already talking about versus trying to pitch something. But those are the 4 biggest mistakes. And within them, there's probably some mistakes too, but those are probably the 4 big ones I see for majority of discovery calls I see.
Yeah. And I think that it's super important for people to realize that having empathy and genuinely listening are 2 big pieces in terms of each of the pieces you said just now, right? When you're truly curious and genuinely interested in the person who's speaking and they say something and you want to go in depth with that, right? So again, treating the discovery as another step and just a checklist. You're not being curious about it,
Right.
being too rigid, pitching too early, and not giving them an opportunity to really delve into what are they actually saying,
Mhm.
right? A lot of people get stuck in this idea. There's a 90-10 rule. So we want to do 90% listening, 10% talking, or as you frame it in the book, we want to do 90% asking questions and 10% of everything else. And in reality, when you're going through that process, you got to remember that you're talking to a human being. You're talking to someone who's got feelings, they've got things going on. And the more that you can delve into the pain that they're experiencing, not from a manipulative perspective, but just understanding what's going on and being there for them and being that support. I had this happen to me the other day. I kid you not. This guy, it was a 30-minute meeting, 25 minutes. He just laid it all out. I had 5 minutes left. I was like, that sounds really terrible. You've been through a lot. I asked him some follow-up questions. I said, look, we only have 5 minutes left, a couple of minutes left on this. Let's schedule a second call because I think there's some of the pieces that you said here I want to delve a little deeper into. And I think that it's important for us to have the proper time for that. What do you think? He was like, absolutely. And we set another time for it. But a lot of people, when that happens, because a lot of reps, they back themselves back to back. And same thing with business owners, they try to squish everything into those 5 minutes,
Mhm.
right? Give yourself space. If
100%.
something's that, and that's part of that not being rigid. If the client is just talking, that's the biggest blessing that could ever happen to you. Because when they're talking, if you're taking notes, like I'm taking notes, I got a page of notes already. If you're taking notes as they speak, you will learn more than you've ever learned about your clients ever.
I'll give
Because
you a really simple
that's where
example.
you learn things.
This is a few years back, and I was in the field with one of my reps, and we had Zoom calls. We also had in-person meetings as well. We would call on the phones. We called email. We also do walk-in cold calls to the physical territory. And I remember with them, we walk into this business, and it's a multi-chain grocery chain. And we asked for the owner. He happened to be there. He came out. He said, I'll give you guys some time." We go up to his upstairs office and we sit down. We think it's gonna be 5-10 minutes, and we're just going to just a full-blown discovery. And 45 minutes goes by, and we're just deep diving, just running the process. And he suddenly stops and looks at his watch. He's like, "Oh my god! Like, actually, I have to head to a dentist appointment in 15 minutes." But I tell you what, gentlemen, this has been incredible. He literally said, "I don't know what you have to sell me, but I know I have a problem and I have to fix it now. Can you guys come back later today?" And it was amazing because we set up an appointment for that day. We walk out, and my reps, "Oh my god, that was crazy." I'm like, "Here's the thing: when you ask the right questions up front, they are also able to share what they're thinking about, and you are able to get them to the point of realizing they have a big problem and they have to solve it now." And when they're really sold that they have a problem, they're far more open to actually to the solution. But if they're not sold they have a problem, they're not going to be open to the solution. So of course, now that we did all the hard work, and now we had a follow up, my rep went back there that afternoon and closed that deal. He made like 2K in commission just like that. Because when you ask the right questions, you're able to get them to a point of uncovering where the current state and their future desired state.
And it brings me into my next question that I had for you, anyways, is how to ask the right questions to create an urgency for people to take action fast. And obviously, we're not necessarily talking about a manufactured urgency,
Correct.
but
Correct.
it's about revealing that urgency. And that's what the questions are all about. So, how do
Yeah.
we ask those questions?
I think it's important to understand that there's two types of pain. Okay. There's latent pain and there's active pain. Now, active pain means they actively know it's a big problem. They're trying to solve it. Latent pain means it's an underlying pain. They may or may not be aware of the problem. So to give you a really simple example, if you're driving your car, it's driving totally fine, and I'm gonna go get an oil change. You go get an oil change. You're sitting in the lobby. You get done, and inevitably the mechanic says, "Hey, let me tell you all the problems wrong with the car." And they say, "Oh, you need to change your air filter. You need to change this. You need to do this flush. It's gonna be like an extra $1,000." And most people are like, yeah, it's been fine. I think I'm good. I'll see you later." Right? Now, reality that may not be a real pain. It's probably a latent pain, right? Versus if you're driving and suddenly like your cars are squirting oil off the road and it keeps breaking down, now you're like, this is an active pain. I have to get this fixed. Okay. Now, if you're a really smart mechanic, let's say that first person comes in, car's driving totally fine. They sit in the lobby, and the smart mechanic says, "Hey, Marcus, your car's almost done. I want to show you a couple things in the bay real quick. Come with me." The smart mechanic will take me out to the bay and start pulling things out to show me, "Hey, see this air filter? It's all black. Hey, this is what you and your kids are breathing. I see the car seats in the back. This is what you guys are breathing. You probably should change this. Would you want us to take care of it? Well, in public, yeah, I see it. It's visibly disgusting. Yeah, it makes sense. Oh, hey, here's this black liquid I pull from your steering wheel. If you keep doing this, your steering wheel will fall off and you'll probably get an accident and you'll probably all die. Should we do a flush? Absolutely. My I'll say it's a little exaggerated, but my point is part of your responsibility as a salesperson is not to manufacture urgency, right? Is to uncover what's going on so they have visibility to the actual pain. And what you really need to do is you need to uncover the pain, the depth of the pain. You need to uncover the cost of inaction. And you need to uncover, hey, what would happen if you didn't fix this? So let me give you another example. It's just really hit this point home. So I've been like, I'm pretty good at oral hygiene, brushing my teeth. I floss my teeth. I try to make sure I just take care of my teeth and my gums. And it's a couple years back, and I'm thinking like it's going pretty good. Like I don't think there's any problems with my teeth. And then I switched to a whole new dentist, and dentist is going through doing cleanup. And he said, "Hey, listen, I want to show you something." And he pulled out some sort of I don't know what the tool is called, and he starts like showing me these measurements. I want to show you these gum measurements. He's, hey, look, like this is measuring this number, this is measuring this number, this is measuring this number. Now, to give you some context, you are 3 times the regular number. And what this actually means is your gums are receding. And if your gums continue to recede, you're going to have tooth problems. We're going to have to pull your teeth out. It gets worse. Okay. If we have to pull your teeth out, then you'll have to get like implants in there. And it'll cost you X amount over time. Now, this won't happen overnight, but what I recommend is we have to solve this problem. So I'm like, okay, this is a real problem. Then I'm open to the solution of what they're going to recommend for going to see a periodontist and all this stuff. So even though I had no pain at all, he took that latent pain and converts it into active pain. In your sales process, it's the same thing. If you don't take them to that journey, what's going to end up happening is they're going to say, huh? Oh, you know what? Sounds pretty good. Your best solution. Let me think about it and let me get back to you. And then suddenly your deal dies. So this is why it's really key to ask what questions up front, because if you try to create urgency on the back end, now you come off sleazy. So that's why you want to be able to have the ammunition on the back end, because the question you ask up front in the discovery.
100%. And I think that one of the things that people forget is it's a process. Don't jump that process, right? Allow yourself to, in the 6 steps, we talk about having the opener, going open-ended questions, giving your context pitch, and then asking hard questions once you've earned the right to ask those questions. Because once you've shown you're the authority, you're the expert, they're more willing to open up, give you information, and take you through what's really happening on the back end. Right. What are the pains they're having? What are their goals? Where is it that, what do they need in order to buy? Like decision-making questions, budget questions, all those things are hard questions because they make people a little bit more uncomfortable if you ask them right up front. What are some specific questions that you like to ask at each stage of the discovery?
Mm-hmm. I think the first piece you have to understand is like before you like get on a call, start like running through all your questions, is you need to build a little context in the conversation. So that's why it's important to have an integrating a statement, an agenda, and then you tee up into the questions. And depending on how it started, let's say, for example, if it's an inbound lead, if someone reached out to you, maybe they're interested, but they're like in the education phase, that could be an easy tee up to go right into pain. So for example, and by the way, it's sometimes not simple. What pain do you have? It might be like a simple, hey, so what sparked you to reach out to begin with? Very simple, very open. And they might tell you anything like, I'm having this problem. Beautiful. So instead of check, we're good to go a little deeper. Hey, so cool. Hey, how long have you been dealing with this problem? What have you done so far to try to fix this problem? And you'll see with some of these questions you ask, sometimes you'll actually hit multiple buckets as a result. So for example, if I say, hey, what sparked you to reach out to begin with? You might uncover pain. You might uncover wants, needs, and desires, right? As a result, okay? Or how long have you been dealing with this problem? They might be like, oh, I've been dealing with this problem for so long. It's been like 15 years or 10 years, and it's costing me this much, or I tried doing this, I tried doing that. So you actually may uncover multiple buckets as part of it. So you want to just keep going down, right? Now, I think another really good one as part of uncovering some of the pain is how are they currently measuring this? Especially in business, you're saying you have an X problem. What's the metric that's telling you this is a problem? This is really important. This tells you what KPIs in their mind. This helps build a tangible problem versus a fluffy problem. A fluffy problem, oh, I think this is a problem, right? Let's say, for example, you sell customer ticketing software. It's, oh, yeah, it's a problem. We're like losing support tickets that come in, so you can't respond to customers. Yeah, it's a problem. Okay. Hey, help me understand, like, how do you know it's a problem? We get emails back. People are wanting to quit because we're not taking care of them. Got it. On average, how many of those getting each week? Well, we're getting at least 5 week people wanting to cancel because of the service. Got it. So if each one canceled, what's the typical lifetime value each customer? It's $1,000 a year that per each one. Okay, so cool. So if you have 5 quit people that churn each week, that's 5K a week you're churning. Is that correct? Yeah. Okay. So over 52 weeks, that's $250,000 you're churning. Does that sound about right? Actually, that sounds about right. Wow. So we're able to go super deep now, and we saw happen there. Now it's pain. That we're going to cover also like the opportunity costs as a result of lost money. So you can see how powerful that can be just to get them to that point. And of course, you can go deeper. Okay, how's this impacting you? How's it impacting the company? How's it impacting your customers? How's it impacting whomever, depending on what you actually sell. All right. Now, that's pain stuff. Now you also want to go for what's their future desired state. So let's say, for example, if they say a really key metric is customer churn. And right now we're churning 25%. Got it. So ideally, because you're always going to have churn of some sort, what do you want that number to really be at? So now we're going to want needs desires. I really want it down to 5%. Got it. That seems very specific, that number. Why that specific number? If I hit that specific number, I actually get a really big bonus at the end of the year. What do you mean specifically? If I hit that number, it's gonna help me make an extra $10,000 a year with my bonus. Got it. Okay. So if you get to that number, how does it actually help the company? We've actually calculated out with our company. If we get our churn down, that actually means we'll add an extra $4 million to our business bottom line as a result because of our current customers. Interesting. And how does that align to the company initiatives? We're really focused on profitability. So this is perfectly in line with that. So you can see how powerful that can be because each one kind of feed off each other because of it. Again, you don't have to ask these specific questions, but if you understand the framework of where you want to go, you start going even deeper, right? If we want to go into, say, executive level influence, it might be as simple. You might start with, hey, think about your last big purchase. What did that look like for you? How did you go about making that decision? Who was involved? If you were bringing a new vendor on like us, what would that look like? Who's all involved? What's important for each? What's the key initiative for each person? If they were to say no, why would they say no? If you had to map out step by step when we leave this call, how'd you go about getting approval internally to get everyone on board? So you get my point. So the deeper you can go, the better it's going to be. If we're going to say resources, so it could be as simple as questions. Hey, if we were to implement a project like this, what's the ballpark price range you're looking to potentially invest? And this is a really powerful question. Most people are scared to ask this question because, again, like it's a tough question to ask. But if you don't know this, you might end up spinning your wheels for way too long. Now, if they have no context and they're like, oh, I think let's say you sell a 100K solution and they're like, oh, I haven't really thought about, I guess maybe 10 or 20K. I have no idea, right? Then you also need to pressure test that as a result. So for example, that might sound something like, hey, I want to be fully transparent. Typically, our solutions can range from 100K to 250K. I know you just mentioned that you have 10, 20K. Like if assuming it's 100% a good fit and you believe it can actually help you get to where you want to go with whatever desired outcome you mentioned, would you be able to access more funds? How would you access more funds? Who would you need to talk to? So you're going super deep so you're able to fully uncover the full executive level buying process to minimize the chances of it popping up. All right. And then there's fear of failure, which is, hey, what have you done so far to try to fix it? Like, why hasn't it worked? Right. What else have you tried? This will tell you quite a bit in terms of, well, like my current vendor, we've talked to them so far. We had them like build a custom integration, but this doesn't work well. It breaks all the time. So the data is always wrong. So we can't make decisions. Got it. So fast forward 6 months down the road. Let's assume you just do absolutely nothing and you still run the same problem 6 months down the road. What would happen if that was the case? That'd be really bad. I would be out of a job. This would happen. This bad thing would happen. So this is important because you want to be able to uncover that. Because let's say fast forward down the road, they get to the point like, oh, we need to think about all this. And you think about what actually costs them. It's far easier to bring up Marcus. I'm a little confused. You told me if you did absolutely nothing and you kept the same problem, this would happen to you. Has that changed? So what's going to change now? We're going to talk to the vendor. So you told me you've been working with the vendor for over 2 years trying to fix this. What do you believe will change you talking to them again? Again, These are tough questions to ask, but it's far easier if you have the context to build into the back end as a result. And then, of course, unequivocal trust is more so at how you're asking questions, how you prepare. So there's no real questions about that. And then the little things is whatever you need to find out that to ensure that it's going to be a good fit to actually to solve the problem, from whatever specifications to integrations to whatever you're selling specifically to actually be able to deliver it. That's like table stakes. That's something that everyone already asks. And that should be, frankly, it's the least important thing, because ultimately, if they don't have everything else dialed, little things is just, it's nothing. That becomes like nothing at the end of the day. But that's how you structure all the questions flow with each other.
Absolutely fantastic. I think that another piece of this, like when you do this depth and you're really planning things out, you're able to have
Right.
transformational discovery calls as a result of this.
Mhm.
Because when you're setting the stage by you're having your ducks in a row, you know what your discovery call is supposed to look like, you have your questions, and you understand how to go through those cadences to make sure to ask those follow up questions, how to go a little deeper. It's going to change not just you, but the entire relationship between you and the potential client as well.
Right.
What other pieces do you feel are important to set the stage for a powerful discovery? Right. A lot of that, I believe, goes into planning, having the right things in place. What else do you feel like is really important for people to remember?
So I think a few things. So I think number one, from a table stakes perspective, you always want to set like a really clear agenda on the call. So this way they know what to expect, because if they're coming on the call, they're expecting like a demo to be shown something and you start interrogating them basically, they're gonna be very, very standoffish. So it's, you want to make sure you're just fully aligned. And or if they're a cold prospect, again, if you're not clear what's going to happen on the call, you're going to frustrate them. Right. Or they might have even forgotten why you're even on the call too. So you want to be able to set like a really clear agenda of what's going to happen. So I like to combine a little bit of what I call an interest creating statement and an agenda together. That's really, really clear. So it might sound simple. Hey, so as you probably saw in some of the prep materials, we specialize in helping solopreneurs like you to 2, 3, 4, 5x their sales results without just grinding and working 80+ hours a week or using sleazy growth sales tactics. So what I want to do today is just do a deep dive into your current situation. If it makes sense, I'll make some program recommendations. And if it sounds good to you, we'll either get you rolling today or upon next steps from here. If I don't believe it's a good fit, I'll tell you straight out and I'll refer you to someone else if I can. And we can still part ways as friends. Does that sound good? Now, again, this is a simple example right there. You don't have to say that verbatim, but you can still tweak it to fit you. So it's really clear on what's going to happen on the call. What happens is when you're that precise with it as well, you are positioning yourself as a trusted advisor. You're very different than everyone else who comes on a call and either gets excited to start talking about themselves or whatever. So that's really, really key. So I think that's the first step that you do that. The second thing you also do as well is do your homework in advance before the call. Do research on them so you're able to have context into the conversation. This allows you to build rapport at a faster level. So, for example, if I got in a sales call, someone was trying to sell me something a couple weeks back, and they did a really great job with their homework. They were checking out my YouTube channel, they're reading the book, etc., and they were doing their homework. When we get on the call, first, how's it going? He's, oh, it's going really great. That's when I say it's cool meeting you in person because actually I just read your book. I love a specific thing in your book, and also I love the video that you came out with, like the raw reality of earning 500K a year in sales. Like you posted yesterday on YouTube. That was it. Really insightful. Point number 4. Wow. Okay. Immediately, this person is like coming in. Okay, this guy did his homework. He just wasn't trying to fluff me with kind of surface level stuff. He Googled, he did his homework to really showcase, hey, he takes this seriously and he's a professional. If you do the homework and then you set the right stage and then you have the right questions ready to go into what you're going to ask and you build context into the questions, you are setting yourself up to really differentiate from 99% of people out there trying to sell anything.
100%. One of the things that people I think struggle with is how long should a discovery call take? And this is a bit of a loaded question, but tell us a little bit about how long that should take, and then we'll open the floor to some Q&A.
Sure. As long as it needs to that provides value for the other person. So sometimes that discovery might be like 10, 20 minutes because maybe if they've been really indoctrinated by you already. So I'll have discovery calls where literally you get on the call, they're like, where do I pay? They're just like ready to go. And there's some where it's like a 3 discovery call, each one we're building off of each other. So as long as it takes that, it's a value to them. And sometimes people think the value is me just like telling them things and teaching them things. The most powerful value could also be the insights they glean from the questions you ask. If you ask like a really powerful question that makes you think, you're like, huh, I never thought about it that way. And if you're doing that consistently, that means you're actually showing them a new and better way of thinking, which actually makes them smarter. So there's actually a lot of insights that can occur based off the questions you ask. So like all people get on sales calls with me, and they'll be like, "Wow, I've never thought about that before. That is such an interesting point." And it wasn't a point that I made. It was a question I asked them, and it made them
Right.
think. They're like, "Wow, I can learn something from this." So you can always tell the quality of a person, it's not based off what they say, but based on the questions they ask. It's really powerful. So
Amazing.
yeah, really key.
Fantastic. So I want to open the floor to some questions. We actually have a couple already in the chat. So I'm going to jump into that. But anybody could feel free to add their questions into the chat. What are you stuck on today? Or if you could ask a question on the topic, what would that be? But we have a question in here on how to wake up ghosted clients. And I think the first question right there is, how do you wrap up the discovery call with next steps to not get ghosted? And then if you didn't do that right, how do you wake them up? I think
Yeah, so
let's do that as a two-part question.
100%. So the first piece is doing the right things up front to minimize even ghosting, right? So I think it's probably the first piece, which means if you did a really good job on that first initial call, like hopefully like they see a lot of value and insight from the conversation you have, even if you didn't present a single thing, by the way, right? Now, then the second piece is going to be just like when you go to the dentist's office, like when you get done with the dentist, before you leave, they have you book another appointment, right? And it's really clear what's going to happen on the next call. And you want to do the same thing. You want to be able to give yourself at least, depending on how long the call is, at least 5-10 minutes potentially to really set up next steps on the call. So you want to be able to establish like what's going to happen between who does what, and then be really clear on what the benefit is going to be for them on that call. It's going to be really clear. Some people are like, "Oh, our conversation is going great today. Let's set up another call to keep talking." Gets really general, and maybe they'll show, maybe they won't. We don't really know. Versus having to be really clear. For example, Yakov, really enjoyed our conversation today, and I feel really confident we can help you solve big XYZ problem. So what we do next is let's have another time in which I'll show you how we solve a big problem like we did for X, Y, and Z person too. Would that be cool? That'd be cool. Great. I'm looking at my calendar right now. I have Tuesday at 8 o'clock open. Does that work for you? Yes, it does. Give me a second. I'm sending it to you right now. Boom. Did that come through? Can you accept it? Great. So on the call, we're just locking it up to make sure it's really good. Okay. And then once the call is over, send a recap email. So again, in that recap email, you want to outline the bullet points from the conversation. Hey, name, great chatting today. Based off what we discussed, here are the big bullet points that you mentioned, or the big challenge you're running into. Next steps are this. In between our next call, our call now and then, you're going to do these things. Does that sound accurate? Did I miss anything? So again, it's very professional. Oh, you're up leveling them as well. Now, depending on the context of the conversation, you maybe send them other things as well, like resources that might be the in between as part of what they need to consume before that next call too, right? It kind of depends on whatever you sell in the situation. So that's what you're gonna want. What you're gonna want to be able to do, and you want to be consistent with it. That's the key. Most people are just not consistent with it. They're like, "Oh, just reach out like next week, and then let's set another time," or they get sold on that. Marcus says, "Hey, Yakov, how we meet next week to discuss this in more detail? Here's the benefits." Yakov says, "Oh, I'm pretty busy next week, actually. So why don't you reach out the week after?" And the average person says, "I definitely will. I will reach out. I'm very excited." No problem. I'm glad you're busy. Let me look at my calendar. I book up very quickly. Let me look at the following week then. Okay, Monday, I have an appointment at 2 o'clock. How about 1 o'clock on Monday on whatever date? So you're locking the confirmation. And again, if they're being wishy-washy, those are pink flags. So if they're like, "Well, I think you're just gonna have to reach out to me like probably that week. I think I should be okay that week." Hey, so can I be totally direct? Sure. So I feel like you're potentially maybe a little bit resistant to me, or am I completely off base here? Doesn't even know how I'm saying that, right? I don't know if I'm interested or not. Hey, listen, you're not going to based on off our conversation today. Do you think maybe it's not a good fit? Because if it is, that's totally fine. I don't want something to call if you don't want another call. So you're removing that pressure of trying to be a sleazy salesperson. Just tell them straight out. And they might be like, "Actually, no, Marcus, you're a piece of crap today. I hate our conversation. I never want to talk to you ever again." Okay. No harm, no foul. I wish you the best of luck, right? And detach from the outcome. All right. So hopefully that's going to help. Let's say you do all those things, Okay. And then they ghost you. They just don't show up. The first thing is when you're on there, on the Zoom or wherever you're meeting them, like within 5 minutes, you should be calling them to see what's up and also email them too and texting them if you have their cell number. Because again, your time is very valuable. So on the fly, you want to be able to do this. And then let's just say, for example, they don't respond. Who knows what happened? It could have been they just not interested or whatever. We don't really know. So now you want to be able to, of course, you can, the follow-up's very simple, right? So it can be 2 days later. It might be as simple as, hey, we missed each other. You want ready to jump on another call so we can discuss X, Y, Z and solve this problem. And again, if you did the initial recap email, it's super easy now that they can remember all the prior conversations. Okay. Now let's say they still don't respond and you try to reach out to them via email and calls, etc. This is where eventually you have to get to the point of having a qualifying number, if you will, which is a dollar amount in your mind where it sounds terrible. If they don't pass that threshold, you're not going to follow up. And the reason is really important because your time is far too valuable. So if you're trying to chase someone at that point, if there's like a tire kicker or whatever, it might be a waste of your time. So let's say, for example, you have a dollar, let's say it's $10,000. You're like, all right, for less than 10K, not even worth my time after I follow a few different times. But maybe if it's above that, no problem. Again, it's a good opportunity. It's like a 50K deal, 100K deal. Okay. Instead of just like calling it quits or doing some sort of dumb breakup email, okay, how can you be of value to that person? All right. Okay. Maybe every 2 weeks or so, you send them something high value that's of value to them based on whatever problem that they're running into. And again, whatever you send them doesn't have to be something that you come up with and create. It could be an article you came across, a video came across. It could be an upcoming webinars of high value to them. Again, the values in the eye of the beholder to uncover what that value is, so you can utilize that to work with them on to hopefully show some value. And again, now you put them in a nurture sequence. All right. And it's playing the long game of that situation.
Right, 100%. And one of the things that I find, and I had a conversation with a client about this today, is once, obviously, as you mentioned earlier, like the first day while you're still on the call, making sure you have those next steps and really locking that in. But in a situation where, for whatever reason, you didn't do that up until now, right? And now you've been ghosted and they're not returning your calls, they're not replying to your emails. Do something out of the box, do something different, intern marketing. They'll do pre-talks all the time. Send them an empty donut box. I was waiting to have our follow-up call together, but I ended up hoping to eat these donuts together. I waited so long, I ate them myself, and then a little card for them to buy some donuts or something. But try to think what's going to touch them in a way that they'll appreciate that difference between you and everyone else they're speaking to, right? Give them an experience that they're never going to forget. When people do that, like they feel respected in a way that nobody's ever gone out of their way to do that for them, right? And that earns your ability to get their time and get their attention.
That's right.
Another interesting question here. We're going to end with this. If you deal with a lot of procrastinators, what tips do you have to encourage them to take action? To give you some context, sorry, he's a time management coach. He helps people overcome procrastination.
Yeah. So if you have a lot of procrastinators, which by the way, this is like most people, you have to be able to deal with it on the call with them. If you get into a follow-up sequence of procrastinators, nothing gets done because they're procrastinators. And most people are generally procrastinators. So that's why even with a powerful framework, it's getting them to the point of realizing now is a time and I have to take action now. And uncovering if they don't take action, what's going to happen. That's really important because if you're not careful with that, then they're going to basically just ghost you and basically procrastinate themselves away. So on the call, you have to take them to that point of like, now the time, we got to get going. And that requires like a deep level of discovery. And well, I'll tell you, especially, and by the way, some people just naturally, that's how the brain works. For example, if they're like really analytical, they might just take a lot of time to process everything. So you need just your style, but you want, you have to get them to the point where I don't want to call it emotional, but they have to be emotionally sold. They must take action. Especially if you're a procrastination coach, you're like, they have to be emotionally sold and they have to make them realize their biggest issues. Especially when you're selling that type of service, you have to get them to lean into the identity of the best version of themselves. And the mistake a lot of people make is the future pace them a little bit. So like they get that objection, oh, like, obvious sounds really good. I just really need to take my time to really think about it and mull it over and like sleep on it. The cool part is if you did a really good job in discovery up front, the powerful frame, Say, hey, listen, so that makes a lot of sense. Sure. Can you help me understand when you delay it and you're pausing it? What's another word for that, do you think? Procrastination. So do you think if you're trying to eliminate procrastination, do you think it serves you to procrastinate on making a decision? So you're helping them realize this, right? Oh, okay, yeah, I guess that's a good point. Got it. Hey, so let's say fast forward, you're the best version of yourself who doesn't procrastinate and takes massive action, and they're committed, they're decisive, what they want, they go after in life, and they're achieving all the personal goals. If that person's on the call right now, what would they tell you to do? Take action. So what do you think you should do? Take action. So again, but you can't do any of that if you don't have a good discovery up front, because then you haven't earned the right? You can see the point there. It's we're future pacing, we're tying some emotion there, but we're helping them come to their own conclusion. It's not about us pushing them and selling them like, you need to take action now. You're a procrastinator. You're doing this. Because very rarely is that going to actually get them to where they want to go.
Right. 100%. This has been absolutely fantastic. One of the things that I always tell people as we end this for everyone here, take one thing, just even just one thing away from today that you're going to put into implementation.